Welcome to this series exploring innovation, progress and achievement using a technocentric paradigm by Ash Stuart.
You may want to also read Ash's original Substack article for the best experience, including footnotes and other details.
Episode 35C, The Art of Reinvention, The Strange Dance of Sounds, on chaos, consequences and curious twists, when reality overrules rules. Today I'll discuss, even explain, a very weird phenomenon that we are confronted with every single day. If not justify it, I hope to partly answer a burning question underlying it. It's exciting times. Our fictional friends have been preparing to stage a fictional play. I know, but their fictional play won't be about a fictional play, I promise. It's just days to go now. The costumes are ready, the dialogues are rehearsed. Bruno the dog gets to put on cool new sunglasses, and Iris the cat gets to flaunt a tiara. Steve has just completed getting 200 copies of their poster, elaborately designed by Irene and Brenda, printed on the finest paper available, ready to flood the campus with it. Theirs is not the only play to be staged on that special day, so they'd better get the crowds prioritize them. Steve is looking at these crisp posters with satisfaction. It has the names of the characters on the poster along with a nice illustration of them, alongside, of course, the title. That's when Brian barges in. Dude, guess what? Great news! We were having a chat at the tavern with some of the crew, the stage organizers, and also some of our most ardent, likely fans. Steve is unsure what he's trying to say. Brian continues, yeah, and we've decided to change the names of the main characters. It'll now be... Steve erupts. What? What the hell? I just spent the last of our budget on the posters, and now you want to change the names? They're already on the posters, as we'd long decided. Well, Brian, perhaps matching the cleverness of Joey from Friends, is like, it's just their names. It's only the spelling that changes. Why worry about what's on the posters? Yes, that weird phenomenon is English spelling. And of course, the underlying question is, why is English spelling so weird? The question of English spelling can be a challenge to many, if not most of us. But here's the challenge I am committing to here. Explain this phenomenon for a completely non-specialist audience, and equally whether to a native English speaker or not. The only thing you need to know is read and write basic English. Permit me. Teething troubles. I take it's fair to say we all have a general sense of what a sound is, specifically what vowel and consonant sounds are. What matters to our story is the vowel sounds in the language, and then the letters used to represent them, with that distinction between sound and letter being important here. When you, or rather your child, needs a dental checkup, the dentist is gonna ask to say ah and not p-p or g-g or whoa. Unless perhaps in that last case, your dentist had dreams of building a web browser in the 90s. My point is, vowels are simpler to pronounce. Once you've started uttering a vowel, the mouth doesn't have to move for that particular vowel, and you can go on saying it ad infinitum, as some would say. The key distinction is, when you're trying to pronounce the sound of a K or P or L, the sound makers in the mouth, the tongue, the lips, and other areas all have to be more or less in a specific position, whereas it's much less demanding with vowels. And in particular, even as you're uttering one vowel sound, you can smoothly glide to another one, almost as if without anyone noticing the transition. We've all done this, at least as kids, right? A, E, I, O. But you can't do with that consonants. P, 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 T, T, S, S, F, F. And from here, It's then obvious that a vowel sound made with twice as much time taken is longer. That is, there can be a distinction between short and long vowels, which is logically on the basis of such time spent uttering them. Languages tracing their descent back to Proto-Indo-European, which we discussed in episode 15, have all early on maintained this distinction. Languages such as Sanskrit, Ancient Greek, and Classical Latin. And guess what? Even Old English, the earliest form as spoken by the Anglo-Saxons, going back about 1,500 years in time. Like, for example, in Latin, malum, with the short one, was different from malum, the long one. One meant evil, and the other meant apple. Very different words. Unless you're explaining Genesis to a solemn audience. Likewise, Old English maintained the exact same sort of time-based vowel length distinction between otherwise identical words. Now here's the strange thing. In English today, our lovely grammar books say clever stuff like long I as in kite. But hold on, that's not the sound you get when you hold the short I as in kit twice as long, like kit, right? There are two vowels in our modern word kite. It's more or less as if you said K-I-T, right? Isn't it like two 8-year-olds in a trench coat trying to pass off as an adult at the box office? With deep respect to Bill Watterson, thank you Calvin and Hobbes for that image. Twist and shout! And so, introducing the great vowel shift. In essence, over roughly 3 centuries from about 1400, a process occurred with English vowels, which is, how can I put it politely, a musical chair gone badly wrong in a drunken frat party. Now don't get me wrong, sound change, especially vowel changes, happen all the time, and not just in English. I mean, other languages can also have drunken frat parties, right? Looking at you, French. But the specific phenomena that unfolded in this particular case, the circumstances around these, and the consequences, make for a rather peculiar and extraordinary story. The long and short of it. So the so-called long vowels in English today are typically represented potentially with external clues to their such quality. Consider short mat, met, bit, but, versus mate, meet, bite, mute. Also note that in the latter examples, the sound of the vowel is same as the name of the vowel. But the funny thing is, we do have instances where our letters still do correspond to the pure long sounds. These are typically in words that came into the English language after this process was completed. And given English tends to retain the original spellings, the more natural, universal practice of pure long vowel sound to letter match can be seen. Think of these as recent foreign exchange students who weren't schooled in our medieval drinking traditions. Sorry, I'll stop that analogy soon. Let's take a few simple examples. Based on an English speaker's accent and preferences, these can vary somewhat, but this is the broad picture. For the letter A, we have karate, Bahamas, taco. The taco one is perhaps especially reminiscent of the dentist experience, right? For the letter I, we have machine, amigo, and pizza. And similarly for the other ones, but I don't want to overload you. Here, the core idea is the same. Before the great vowel shift, all English words with long A or I had these vowel sound qualities, and likewise the other long vowels. So name sounded rather like its Sanskrit cognate nama, that is, rhyming with Bahama, like in that Anglo-Saxon hit song, Bahama Bahama Nama. Likewise, back in time, time had the same sound of the I in pizza and did not rhyme with, well, our time. So how did the times change? Well, we actually have interesting examples of such vowel shift going on in our time. Consider the Australian G'day, where day and mate have a totally new quality of vowel in place. So yes, that's the crux of it. No, I'm not blaming the Aussies for the state of our spelling, fun and easy as that would be. But fundamentally, Australian and New Zealand pronunciation drifts are actually neat, modern-day examples of what happened. If you recollect that thing mentioned above we did as kids, a, e, o, u, e, that's sort of what happened with English vowels, not in that order, and over the course of centuries. Facing the music. I'll leave some technical details, as usual, in the footnotes. But in essence, once one vowel sound starts to shift too close to the next one in the mouth, that sound feels the pressure to move as well, and over time, there has been that musical chair. Practically, this is our subconscious mental device to avoid confusion by having two vowel sounds too close to each other. But what then went wrong was that in many cases, two different vowel sounds moved to the same third position and converged there. Think of two people ending up in the same musical chair. Think meat and meat, one of meeting and the other the food. Or think of someone ending up sitting on two chairs at once, even though that requires a stretch of the imagination among other things. Or it got so crowded that some were actually kicked of being pure vowel, such as our kite example above. So when the music stopped, English spelling was in a big goddamn mess, but we haven't even mentioned our poster boy of English spelling yet. And no, it's not Steve from the above story, although the poster problem was pretty much identical. Pressing changes, changing pressures. Please meet William Caxton, the man who brought the printing press to English. And when he did so in 1476, the Great Vowel Shift Party had only just started, and as I mentioned above, would still have centuries to go. The GVS started just after Chaucer and ended after Shakespeare. In fact, it was still ongoing in the Bard's lifetime. But, given the ability of the press to freeze the spelling system, Caxton ended up becoming the accidental villain of English spelling. We have to be fair to him. We shouldn't just dismiss him as being cax-handed. He was aware of some of the problems of English spelling and pronunciation in his day, and we have the benefit of hindsight he didn't. Furthermore, he was a businessman, not a linguist or phonetician, but the decisions he and the staff he imported from the continent, and thus not being native English speakers, had profound effects on how English spelling eventually ended up. We saw in episode 35 how English went through two rather turbulent phases, such that by the time we get to 1300s, there was no such thing as an English language, official and standardized. We then saw in episode 35b Geoffrey Chaucer's valiant efforts to remedy the situation. But the underlying reality was in good part just that, the quandary of which dialect of English to base the spellings on. Caxton was troubled by this, but there were no easy answers. As I've said, the Great Vowel Shift was a rather more intense and peculiar phenomenon of vowel shift, and to this day there are debates among scholars as to what caused it. In good part, as we saw, this is just a natural phenomenon, but I suspect the upheaval of the Black Death in the mid-1300s, which we touched upon in episode 40 and episode 41, leading to half the population of England dead might be a factor. Perhaps this compounded with there being no single official standard, which itself was exacerbated by the Anglo-Norman contact. Another point is, English is essentially not a single language as we see language. It's this lasagna of Norse, Norman, Latin, Greek, and other layers. Each of these massive linguistic influences brought their own sound and spelling challenges that made the idea of a single uniform spelling much harder. So now for the elephant in the room. Why the bloody hell didn't they fix the issue later on? What about English spelling reform? Don't even go there. Trust me, they tried. Many people tried, including yours sincerely, notably perhaps Andrew Carnegie with the support of Theodore Roosevelt. Now, you could easily say that was the richest man and the most powerful man on earth teaming up for this, and even they failed. Furthermore, English spelling reform is a can of worms straight out of Pandora's box. Imagine it so happened that the clever people in the committee decided that right, as in right hand, and right, as in write a letter, shall henceforth be spelled R-Y-T. All right, I hear you say, I don't mind losing the clear visual distinction because I'm good that way. But then, what about the spelling for ing form? Is it to be R-Y-T-I-N-G or R-Y-D-I-N-G? For if you make one of them the right, millions of speakers you'll be wronging. I mean, both pronunciations exist. And that's even before you head over to Northern Britain or the US South. And what about the M. Wright brothers? But you know what? It's actually not such a bad thing. Studies have shown that when we look at page of words, we do not read the words letter by letter. The eye grabs a useful chunk of them, and then the next chunk, and so on. What this means is, once we've learned the words in their standard forms, the brain has been trained to grab them on the page. They are sort of shapes, not clusters of letters. I admit having to learn them might be a challenge in the first place, but even where spelling exactly matches sound, there is in any case the effort of mapping each word to meaning. In this respect, written English is not that far from written Chinese, despite the obvious differences in the two systems. And here's another thing many of us in the West might not know. There is no single Chinese speech. There are several different Chinese languages. I call them languages in the technical, not political sense, because they are in many cases not mutually intelligible. Think of a Romanian meeting a French person. And in Chinese, they all use the almost same writing system. They look at a set of symbols, representing words with rather different pronunciations but much the same meaning, and, importantly, directly map the words to the meanings in their heads. And it works. Beyond Chinese, even into Japanese to a fair extent. The fact that we have a somewhat pictorial, rather than fully phonetic spelling, affords us diversity. In our myriad accents, it offers a strange kind of accessibility. Just as the speakers of different spoken languages interpret the same words in their own sounds, this perhaps matters more for what currently functions as a global language,